There are so many like little finger play songs and action songs out there. And you've probably sung many of them with your children. You think like, open, shut them, give a little clap. Or, where is Thumpkin, or the one that just made me shudder because the girls just kept wanting to sing it. Daddy finger, where are you? Right. There's so many out there. I mean, they are great, and we should be doing action songs and finger play songs with our children. Why? Because it is developing their fine motor skills. And these are skills that are very important for us. The other week, I looked at gross motor skills. Today, let's look at fine motor skills. Hi, and welcome to Learning Life, and thank you for joining us today as we look at fine motor skills. Do you ever take for granted like how much you actually really are using your fingers and your hands? I know I do. I'm using them every day to be writing, to be typing, when I'm playing the piano, like all of these different things. And so often I don't think anything of it until maybe like I've hurt myself and I can't be doing those things. These are great skills to have, and we need to have it because we've developed our hands. We've developed our fine motor skills. We are using them constantly. We are learning how to use them constantly. And that's a great thing. I mean, learning, so very important, right? I love to learn, and this is Learning Life. We're all in this process together as we're learning how to use our body, as we're learning all of these different amazing things, whether it's about parenting or school or anything like that. Well, thank you so much for watching and for being part, and I hope that you are learning something fun too. So as I said, the other week it was gross motor skills. And, gross motor skills, they're using like the larger muscles, walking, running, jumping, climbing. They're all skills that we develop. Well, let's bring it right down to our fine motor skills, which involves our hands, our fingers, and our thumbs. Okay? Are they important? Yes. Fine motor skills are very important. They are an almost continual part of life. I mean, we use our hands really for a lot of things, don't we? And as we're going about, we're picking things up, we're manipulating objects. As I said, as grown-ups, like we are writing, we are typing, we're dialing on the phone, we're picking up, doing so many different things, making lunches, cleaning dishes. We are using fine motor skills all the time, but they're not something that we just have. Like gross motor skills, we need to develop them. And they are important because they do encourage creativity for us. As we think about like play and all of those things for our children, as they're learning to manipulate and to do and to touch and to feel, their creativity can really take off. And from that, it can develop communication skills of like writing, like even talking, like of drawing. How are we using our hands in our communication? It encourages independence. I mean, yes, don't we remember all children go through that I do it myself sort of phase because they want to do it, whether it's getting dressed or feeding ourselves. We want that independence, and we need fine motor skills for that. And then to later on develop really into hand-eye coordination with things like catching balls, My hand-eye coordination is not the greatest sometimes, like especially in ball games, but it is a skill that I could be developing if I got more involved in it. And of course, the more that we can do these things, feel that independence, get that creativity going, then yes, it's going to boost and build confidence. What are some of the fine motor skills that we need? It's crazy when we sort of stop and start thinking about all that we are using them for. So I said, yes, writing, like we first of all learn how to hold like that marker or that crayon or that pencil. And you think about like how grip, most children will hold like this, and then it moves to the proper sort of grip that we have to be able to write fluently and neatly and all of that. So, we go through different grips and grasps, working out which hand, then we're going to be like scribbling and then to coloring and then more detailed coloring. Maybe even into drawing and then into writing, how we can use our hands with that proper grip. So writing and holding a pencil or a pen, that is a great skill. And then there's cutting. And it made me think, like how often we talk about like cutting like this, that's actually not how we do it, but we've got, our scissors, we're doing this. Cutting is a very big skill, and it's something that really takes time to develop. We don't just pick up a pair of scissors and then just start cutting in a straight line. It takes a lot of practice, and it is a great skill to have. And then we have things like dressing ourselves. I got dressed today, and I had to use a lot of fine motor skills to get dressed. Now, back when I was learning special education at university, they really made us stop and think about a lot of like the fine motor skills that are involved in a lot of these things. And again, like I take it for granted, not just dressing myself, but even thinking about like dressing toys, and our children go through that. Oh, especially Barbie clothes. You have to have some good fine motor skills to get Barbie's clothes on. I mean, you really do. But then we move on from like dressing ourselves into like tying shoelaces. I remember having to practice to get it right, and really having to work at it with my girls. I've realized how often like their shoes don't have shoelaces, and it's a skill that we need to ask. Pediatricians are asking, does your child know how to tie their shoes? And you're like, well, they don't actually have any shoes with shoelaces, which is actually really quite possible to probably get through the rest of your life without shoelaces. But it is a good skill to have with that manipulating and looping and tying and how do you hold things. And then there's like zippers, buttons, buckles, Velcro, all of these different things take different fine motor skills, and we need them like in getting dressed or like locking a door, like doing all of these different things. There are so many skills that we need. Our hands are truly amazing. And don't you want to feed yourself? Yes, we can use our hands, but then we graduate and we move up into spoons and forks and knives and chopsticks and all of these different things. And they all take different fine motor skills. We think with babies, starting like that swiping and grabbing and mushing, but we do move up to how to actually spoon, how to spear with a fork and move, how to cut with a knife. That is actually a really good skill to have. We do need to be able to cut. So those are really just like some of the fine motor skills. And we could like break it down into like this minutia, but we won't. But stop and take a moment and think about how many things you're actually doing like with your hands and what we need those skills for. So if we have these skills and we need to develop them, are there any red flags? Does your child have no interest in like dressing themselves or like in, getting that stuff done? That's okay. But for a moment, let's just stop and think about, like age appropriateness too. Okay. I'm not thinking like a younger child shouldn't be developmentally doing it. I'm talking about like older, that they're not trying to dress themselves. They'd just rather just stand there and let you do it. That can be a red flag. Maybe they're not interested in cutting or drawing or even moving into writing. Again, if they're too young, we're not worried. But if they are well beyond that stage when they should be able to cut with some scissors or at least scribble and draw it, but they don't have that interest, it can be a good time to stop and go, oh, why don't they have interest? Maybe it is a muscle tone issue. Maybe it is something else, if they're avoiding anything fiddly, and by fiddly, I mean like you've got like little tiny things like that you've got to like pick up or do. If they're not wanting to do that, again, a red flag, and it's worth speaking to your pediatrician because you might need to go to a physical or an occupational therapist in order to build up and develop these skills. Again, it could be muscle tone issues. There could be something else going on. So it is definitely worth looking into. And especially like this one is for babies, if they're really not developing that pincer grip. Okay. We think like as babies, we start them out like with puffs and, Cheerios and stuff because we want them to be able to pick up and to feed themselves. And so if they're not picking up those small things with a pincer grasp when they're older, then that is definitely a red flag. Now, again, with all of these things, I say don't overly concern yourself if it's really just outside maybe what is the traditional like window for that skill. I'm talking about like later. I'm also saying like let's not push too early. Like I've had friends and others that I've known who've been worried, like maybe the preschooler said, well, your child's not cutting on a straight line. And I'm like, your child is 3. They shouldn't be cutting on a straight line. It's not actually developmentally right for them to be able to do that right now. We do have like that proper like science-backed developmental stages. And then I think we've got like this sort of societal push that we've got to do it earlier. But little hands might not be ready for it yet. If you actually look at how much hands develop in the first 6 years, it is really like amazing. And so let's not push children earlier than they really should be able to do something. Let's just let them be ready for it, okay? But if we're well outside of that window and they're not doing these things, then it's definitely worth investigating and listening to your heart on it, going, I think that there is a problem here. Go find some answers. Activities that you can do at home to be developing fine motor skills. Well, there are so many tasks around the house, aren't there? Think like setting the table, being able to put things down, pouring juice or water into a cup. That is a wonderful skill. While you're there at the table, like actually using your spoon and your fork and your knife or your chopsticks or whatever cutlery, silverware that you're using to eat and using it appropriately. After dinner, wiping the table, part of that cleaning process, is also another very good thing to be developing fine motor skills. Then there's getting dressed, letting them pick their clothes or putting them on themselves. Doesn't matter if it's on backwards as long as it's on, right? But these are all great things, getting them involved in this process. And then there's other fun things that we can do, like finger painting and then painting with paintbrushes. Look, maybe you don't like mess. And I get that. Not everybody does, but you could finger paint by putting it into a Ziploc bag and sealing it so that they're still manipulating. Or do it. We still love doing it. Paints onto a plate for the girls, and I send them into the bath because we've got an all-in-one bath and shower unit. So they can paint all over the wall, and they used to start with fingers, and now like they love to use paintbrushes, and then they paint. And then at the end, I just turn on the water for them, and they get to wash it off, give them a cloth, they're wiping and cleaning. These are all like great skills. So you can have fun and be messy, and you can also clean. There's Play-Doh, kinetic sand, moon sand, like all of these things. And you don't have to go out and buy them. There are some cheap ways to be able to make them at home, like getting involved like in that manipulation, or make bread. That's always good. Cooking has so many great fine motor skills in there. You can draw, you can cut, you can scribble, whatever it is, just having opportunities to be able to draw or to color is great. Or do puzzles. Because, that manipulation and moving around and turning it so that it can fit into the right thing. Small blocks, Legos, all of those things are great. Or threading, just getting a piece of string and maybe using penne pasta first because it's a nice big hole, and thread and make necklaces. And then you can move down to smaller pasta or Cheerios or Fruit Loops, and then like graduating up into beads. We love, I really actually love like the whole edible threading when they're younger, because then if they try to chew it or eat it, it's really not too bad. But threading is such a great skill. There are so many activities that we can do that are developing fine motor skills. Now, you probably heard me talk about Charlotte Mason before, or if you haven't, you can check out that video. I love Charlotte Mason's philosophy on education. And one of the things that she really had as part of her curriculum was handicrafts. That all children at a young age are learning how to do things like knitting and needlepoint and stuff like that. Now, of course, she was well before the age of computers and TVs and stuff. So to her, it was a skill for later in life. Maybe you could make money from it. But she also saw how it was good for the children to be able to use their hands. Like even during lessons, she encouraged like knitting or like French knitting or whatever the needlework was while listening to stories, so that you're engaging your body in different ways, but also developing these fine motor skills. And, they really are fun and easy to do. Like we've done French knitting at home, and we've just made them like with toilet rolls and pop sticks. I do have a video on French knitting. It's a lot of fun. You could move up into like proper knitting. Not me. I cannot knit. I'm forever dropping stitches. But you could get like one of those knitting looms and use it. Maybe they are like doing embroidery or long stitch. Other looms. There are so many different things that we can use our hands for that are strengthening and building up those skills, that we can do it like as part of our lesson. We're reading a book together. let's just get out our French knitting and do that. Like, it's great. So Charlotte really saw how these skills can be developed, like in different ways. Yes, you're learning a new skill. This one, but as well for a skill later in life, but it also might just become a creative outlet for your children, which is great. And then don't forget things like learning an instrument like guitar or piano, where we're using our fingers and our hands like in different ways. There are so many ways that we can be developing our fine motor skills. And let's just remember, we need them. We want to build up and strengthen. I know I did damage like to my neck and my hands. And for a while, I couldn't do a lot of the things that I just loved doing. And it was so, so hard. And so if there are things that we can be doing for our children to be developing these skills, let's do it. And let's have some fun with it. Well, thank you so much for watching today. Thank you for just your likes and your comments, as I've said. And if you've got any questions, please feel free to ask me. And, if you want to see more of these videos come out, subscribe. But also, you can join us as a champion. And you can do that through patreon.com or my website, where you'll see the other videos and like instructions or more information. And you can check that out at learningthis.life.